king. This guy has servants who do everything for him, okay? This guy has servants who brush his teeth for him, floss him. He has servants who dress him, make his clothes and put them on him, and who serve him his coffee in the morning. And he has servants who cook his food and entertain him and clean his palace and just, he hardly has to lift a finger unless he wants to. In Fiddler on the Roof, they had a funny saying. They said, we poor could make a good living if the rich could hire us to die for them. So anyway, this guy that we're imagining, this king, if he could, he would have servants that would die for him so that he could live forever. Okay? And as a matter of fact, this king in this kingdom, he's so powerful that everyone in the land is his servant, and everyone in the land does his will. Okay? So he is the leader, he's the king, and everyone is his servant. Now, do you dream of being in charge? Maybe you're not in charge. Maybe you're in charge where you're at, the company you're at, wherever. Do you dream of being in charge? Do you dream of servants obeying your every command and fulfilling your every wish? You just ring a little bell and, someone brings you a chocolate milkshake. And you ring another bell and someone brings you a pillow upon which to rest your head. Just everything, everybody just does whatever you want. Kind of like you think maybe it is for the president of the United States or something. Do you dream of this? And do you think that is what being a leader is all about? You think, if I were in charge, people would do what I say and they would respect my authority and, my wish would be their command. Do you think that's what being a leader is all about? Because if so, I'm afraid you've got another thing coming. So I want to talk about leadership from a biblical perspective. So let's see, leadership. Now, when I was in high school, there was a lot of talk about leadership. And I don't know, Vicki, do they still do this? Do they still have leadership seminars you can go to? Somehow there was a focus back then, it seemed like, about, wanted people to be leaders. How do you make great leaders? And leaders are important. But what is leadership? Is it just being the boss? If you're the boss, well, I must have leadership because I'm the leader. Well, today I want to define leadership as showing the way. Showing the way. And that's a really short, sweet, simple definition, but I think there's a lot of meat in that. A lot of depth can be in that. So showing the way is leadership. Now, the thing is, there's more than one way to do this. There's more than one way when you lead, when you're in charge, in authority, there's more than one way to show the way. Now, there is a gift of administration, okay? And what this means, well, in Romans 12, 6 through 8, I'm going to go ahead and read it. Let me pull up my Bible on my iPad here. And so in Romans 12, it talks about gifts. And in the Bible, it talks a lot about gifts in various passages. But in this passage, and let's see, verses 6 through 8, let me read it. It says, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it's to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, and that's the one, that's administration. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. So there are these gifts in the body, in the world. People have these gifts. And some people are gifted leaders. And these people tend to have an ability to not think just about short-term goals, but they have an ability to think about the long-term outcome. They have a vision. They can see the vision far off, and they can present it to the people that are serving them. Okay, these people with the gift of administration, they're good, hopefully, at identifying the strengths in the people that are working and assigning them to the right jobs, to the jobs that fit them the best. Okay, so that's what good leaders do. People with gift of administration can be like this. They can organize. They can say, okay, you so-and-so, go and, you organize this part of the party. And, you so-and-so, you go make invitations. And you so-and-so, you prepare the food. And they're good at this organizational stuff. So some people are gifted leaders, okay? Now, they're good at overseeing and managing people and projects. And this is just something that God has put inside of them. Now, I believe in the Bible that Joseph had this gift. I'm talking about not Joseph, the father of Jesus, but Joseph in the Old Testament. You know, he was sold into slavery. And whenever he became a slave in the house of Potiphar, the Lord blessed him. And I think he had this gift of administration. And Potiphar saw this, and he put him in charge of the prison. And so he ran the prison. And then later on, he was exalted. No, I'm sorry. I got that messed up. First, he was in charge of Potiphar's house as a servant, and then he had some false accusations coming against him, so he gets thrown in jail, and the guy puts him in charge of the jail. That's amazing for this gift to come through so much that even when you get thrown in jail, they put you in charge. Okay, and then later on, of course, he became the administrator of all Egypt. Pharaoh was over him in authority, but he was the guy who did the work of leading and organizing. He was the man with the plan. So some people have a gift of administration. Now, these leaders like this, they show the way. Hear me out here. They show the way by their words, by the things they say. They say, go and do this. You should do this. This is how you live your life. You should live your life. This is how you should proceed. Here is the plan. So they're showing the way by telling you. And that's the main thing, because they tell you the plan and they give you your assignment. You know, your boss at your job, he tells you what he wants you to work on. And so leaders who lead like this lead by their words, and that's how they show the way. And it's, you know, it's good and it's legitimate, and we need people who can lead and organize like that. Now, God chooses certain people to govern and to be in charge. So in a country, you know, there's the king or the president, there's the government. And, you know, these are the people who hold the authority, okay? In a home, you know, there's the father. We believe biblically that the man is the head, okay? But also the parents, there's a whole authority structure. And there's the mother, you know, and the children under that. In the church, there's the pastor. Now, he may not be, you know, he may be an apostle or a teacher or something. But anyway, there's the senior shepherd of that church. And that's where the seat of authority is. God has ordained authority and structure and order. And it's important for us to honor the leaders that God has established. This, for one thing, especially when they're good, godly leaders who know what they're doing, you know, and fear the Lord, there's a covering. There's a protection for us when we submit to authority and, you know, do what the authority says. And it's just something that God has established. And it says in the word, you know, to give honor to whom honor is due. Now, let's talk about RESPECT. When someone holds an office of authority, I believe that we need to show respect. Okay, we show respect to the president or the mayor because they are the president or the mayor. Now, even if you think the person who holds that office is a jerk or a low-down dirty crook or a liar or a thief or whatever, I believe we can still show honor to the office. It's like, hello, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Governor. I didn't vote for you. I'd never vote for you in 100 years. You're thinking this. But I can still come into your office and say, yes, sir, and no, sir, and be civil and polite and show honor because he sits in the office of the authority and authority is instituted by the Lord. So there's a structure in there that remains intact, even though people don't always do what they're supposed to. Now, likewise, this is the opposite, and this is kind of the amazing part. A person can have no title or position, and yet they can be revered. You could have, you know, on the one hand, you could have a mayor or a governor or a president that everybody hates, and yet you still, you know, you show honor to the office. But on the other hand, you could have some guy who just, I don't know, writes a blog or newspaper column or, I don't know, just, and words of wisdom just flow out of their mouths. And everybody like reads this guy's blog or reads his column and they're like, wow, this guy is so wise. And they respect him. They revere him and honor him. And so there's two types of honor here. See, there's a respect that is commanded and there's a respect that is earned. You know, one time, I was teaching high school. I taught high school French one year in Alvin, Texas. And once I told this to my kids, I was like, because they were being disrespectful or whatever. I was like, look, I am the teacher, and you are going to show respect. You're going to, behave in class, and you're going to honor me in this way, and you don't have a choice. This is the honor that you owe to me. But then on the other hand, on the other side of that, there's an honor that I have the chance to earn from them. But if they found out over time that I was a good teacher and that I cared about them and that I was respectable and honest, then over time they could honor me not just because I held the position of authority, but also because from their hearts they knew me and they thought I was a man of integrity or a good teacher or whatever, and they gave me honor not just from duty, but also out of their hearts. See, there's two sides to this honor thing and this respect thing. There's a respect that's commanded and a respect that's earned. So if you're at work, you work at a company, listen, your boss, I believe that we need to show respect and honor to our boss even if they haven't earned it from our hearts, as evidenced by their actions. So there's a difference there. Respect and honor. Now let's talk about another kind of leadership. We talked about the leadership that comes from when you sit in the position of authority, but there's another kind. So not everyone can be in charge. Like, not everyone can be the pastor of the church. Not everybody can be the mayor of Houston or the president of the United States. Because if you did, that would be chaos. Because when everybody's in charge, that means really nobody's in charge, and that's called anarchy. And everybody just kind of does whatever they see fit, pushes their way around. Now, but this doesn't mean, I believe, that everyone can't be a leader. I believe that generally speaking, everyone can't be a leader. See, some people show the way. That's what we said leadership is, showing the way. Leadership is showing the way. Some people show the way by the example that they set. They show the way by what they do, okay? And this is another form of leadership. So, maybe you can't preach or teach or sing or play guitar. You might not think I can do any of those things. But listen, you can lead the church, even though you're not the pastor or the preacher or whatever. You can lead, for example, in how to walk in integrity. Because if you're a person who is a model of honesty and uprightness, then you're standing, shining, even if you don't mean to, as an example, and you're being a leader, and people can follow your example. So even a youth, even a teenager, even though maybe they don't know a lot about the Bible or maybe they don't always do everything right, they can be a leader. They can demonstrate zeal and enthusiasm. They're like, oh, I'm so excited about Jesus. I'm so excited about healing or about the gospel, about evangelism. And they're being a leader in that regard. And even a young child can set an example of how to be kind to others. Even children can show kindness. See, in all these things, they're leading because they're setting an example and a model to follow. And it's even possible to lead by serving, and that's really what I want to talk about today. It's even possible to lead by serving. So what did Jesus say? Let's talk about what Jesus said. The mother of two of Jesus' disciples asked if her sons could be second and third in command. So the sons of Zebedee, okay, their mom comes up and says, grant that, here, let's see, what did Jesus say? Matthew 20 through 28. She comes up and she's like, grant that these two sons of mine, one of them may sit on your left and one may sit on your right. Okay, she has high aspirations for her children, like every mother probably does. And what does Jesus say? Let's turn there. Because he talks to them and he says, well, can they drink from the cup that I'm going to drink from? And they're like, yeah. And he says, well, actually they will drink from the cup. He says, but it's only for my Father to grant those places, to assign those places. But then he gives a really important lesson here. Okay, and this is what he says. Because the other 10 disciples, they heard about it, they got mad. They're like, what? They're trying to be in charge. And so Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus sets this example. He says, look, you guys look at the world, look at the nations, the Gentiles, and you know that the boss acts like the boss. And the boss on top tells everybody beneath him what to do. Okay, you know how this works, and maybe the boss doesn't take any crap and everybody better toe the line and there's going to be discipline and, they're going to follow his leadership. But Jesus said, not so with us. He says, if you want to be the top, he says, you've got to be the bottom. If you want to be the leader, you got to be the servant. And he said, just like me, just like Jesus saying, just like me, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. I came to do something for you. And I came to give my life as a ransom. So he set the example. So serve your way to the top. I believe that's the principle here. Serve your way to the top. Now, let's take a scenario about where we think about who's in charge and who's really being served, okay? Who's the boss and who's the servant? So let's look at this. When you have a baby, when you have a child, especially a small child, you as the parent, you sit in the place of authority. Okay, God said, children, obey your parents. God put parents in authority. So this means that the parent, you decide what the kid eats, and you decide when they sleep, when bedtime is, and when nap time is, and you decide who they play with. No, you can't go play with him. Yes, you can go play with her. You decide where you crawl. Don't touch that. Don't crawl over there. Come here. I'm going to pick you up, put you in your playpen. You as a parent, you are the boss. You decide all these things. You sit in authority. And that child, as they get older, they have to obey their parents. But it also means that you get to bathe the baby, and you dress the baby, and you sit up at night when the baby is crying and sick and has colic. And you're the one that has to administer their medicine every 2 hours all night long. And you're the one that has to clean up their messes that they make, because they're not old enough to clean up their own messes. And you're the one that has to change their diapers. So listen. Oh, wait. Then when they get to be older, it gets even better. Because you're the one, you get to do their laundry, and you get to cook their meals, and you get to drive them around like a taxi driver to all their events. And you get to do all this stuff for the children that you're the boss of. So the question is, the question at the top is, who's the servant? Who is serving who? Who is the boss and who is doing the work? Just something to think about leadership. 2 rules of leadership. Today I want to give you 2 rules for Christian leadership, and these apply in the church and outside of the church, I believe. They're really simple. They are as follows. So one is honor the Lord. Love the Lord, obey the Lord, walk in uprightness. That's the number 1 rule of leadership. And you set an example in that way. And number 2 is you serve people. You serve people. We will never get away. I think I say this in a slide, later. We'll never get away from serving. From what can I do for someone else? What can I do for someone else? How can I help you? How can I bless? And how can I love you? How can I do this? Honor the Lord and serve people. Now, let's see how I'm doing on time. I think I'm okay right now. But listen, Rehoboam and Jeroboam. In 1 Kings 11 and 12, we read about 2 kings, Rehoboam and Jeroboam. I should have everybody say it, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, but you don't have to say it. There were 2 kings, and unfortunately, I believe neither king really followed the 2 rules of leadership that I just laid out, okay? So I think they knew better. They should have known better. So let's look at the story now. I was going to take the time to read it, more or less, but I'm going to try to just, since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to try to tell you from memory. This is what happened. History of Israel, more or less. Israel comes out of Egypt, okay? They go into the promised land. They're led first by Moses and then by Joshua in the promised land. And then over time, they have a series of judges. Someone would rise up and they would be a leader. It wasn't a king, but it was a judge. And often the judge the Lord would use them to defeat the enemies that were oppressing Israel. And so the people would follow the judge. Well, eventually the people decided we don't want God as our king. We want an earthly king. We want a man to be a king. And God said, okay, you don't want me to be your king, I'll give you a king. And he said, but he's basically saying it's going to be a two-edged sword. It's going to be good and bad. So God instituted Saul. There was Saul, but then Saul didn't really follow the Lord, so he got booted out. And then there was David. David, the one that even though he messed up, his heart was always for the Lord. He loved the Lord and served the Lord. And so David, I think arguably, he's the greatest king that Israel ever had because his devotion for the Lord was he was just passionate for the Lord. But then his heir, his son, was Solomon. And Solomon kicked it up a notch. Solomon took it to the next level. Solomon may not have had the passion for the Lord, but I'll tell you what, he had the money and he had the power and he had the influence. And of course, at the first of his life, he honored the Lord and loved the Lord. And then it says he veered off course. He married a bunch of foreign women, started participating in idolatry, and that was pretty bad. But listen, you had David, who was a great king. Then you had Solomon, who by certain measures was an even greater king. So what's going to happen on the third generation? What should it have been like? I tend to think that it should have multiplied, like it should have kept going. Like David, the granddad, he was great, and then Solomon was greater. And then the son should have been like amazing, in my opinion. I think this is how, with the kingdom, things increase. The blessings, the inheritance grows from generation to generation. Now, Rehoboam was the son of Solomon, and Rehoboam became the king after Solomon. Now, he probably had big shoes to fill, and people had big expectations for him because his dad was just like the smartest man in the world and maybe the richest man in the world too. So he probably had a lot of weight of expectations on him. And the people came to him and they were like, oh, Rehoboam, king, your dad was really tough on us. Could you just slack up a little bit? And so that's basically what they said. They were like, your dad worked us very hard. Could you lighten our load? And so Rehoboam went to his counselors. He went to the elders, or he had counselors, and they were the counselors that had been there when his dad was king. And they were like, what should I do? He was like, what should I do? And this is what they said, and this is the key verse, okay? The key verse. Oh, there goes my clicker. He's in 1 Kings 12:7. He asked the elders, how should I respond to the people? Okay, and they said, if today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants. They said, if you will be a servant, they will be your servants. And that was good advice. And you know what? He decided not to take it. He decided that he would listen to his buddies who were the same age as him. And he was like, what do you think I should do? And they were like, oh, man, you should say, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. And my father whipped you with whips. I'm going to whip you with scorpions. And that's what he told the people. And so the people said, forget you. And the people rebelled, and there are like 12 tribes in Israel, and 10 of them left and stopped obeying Rehoboam. It was David, the line of David. They stopped obeying King Rehoboam. And so Rehoboam only had like Judah and Benjamin. So his kingdom was real small. And so then there's this other guy, Jeroboam. Jeroboam had served under Solomon, and Solomon had seen that Jeroboam was a smart, capable worker, basically, and he put him in charge of this stuff. But then one day a prophet came up to Jeroboam and says, the Lord is going to make you king of 10 tribes because Solomon hasn't served the Lord. He said, Solomon hasn't served the Lord, so he's going to lose 10 tribes and you're going to be king. And the Lord told Jeroboam these great promises. He was like, if you will serve me and honor me, I will make you a dynasty. Like, it will be awesome. He says, like, David's not totally out of the picture, but you will be blessed and, big and important and powerful, whatever. He has this great promise. So what happens? Whenever Rehoboam answers Israel and says, I'm going to be tougher on you than my dad was, Jeroboam's over here, and all the people, the 10 tribes of Israel, make Jeroboam king. Now, to try to make this long story short, listen, Rehoboam in his kingship, he didn't do so great. Sometimes he kind of did okay. He humbled himself before the Lord, and before the Lord at least one point. It was kind of like a D minus kingship, okay? But Jeroboam, he became like notoriously famous for being evil. He brought all kind of idolatry into the land, and he made golden calves for the people to worship. And like if you read the book of Kings, the books of Kings, like over and over, it'll make reference back to Jeroboam and the sins that he caused Israel to commit. So he was just notorious as being a leader, not of goodness, but a leader in setting the example of wickedness. Now, the key verse there, where the elders say to Rehoboam, they say this: if you will be a servant, the people will be your servants, like forever. They will always be your servants. That's my key here today. Where do I have that? Unfortunately, Jeroboam, he didn't follow the rule about honoring the Lord. And Rehoboam, he didn't really follow the rule about serving people. Let me go back there real fast. Just the two rules. Honor the Lord, serve people. Honor the Lord, serve people. Here's the final word. It is good to hold an office of leadership and lead by your words, by your commands, by the directives you give. If the Lord makes you to be the boss at work, it's good. We need bosses. We need bosses who can lead and give assignments and organize people. And if God makes you to be a pastor in a church, it's good to have a pastor to speak and advise, and declare the word of the Lord, and that's good. When you're in a position of leadership, if you're the mayor, the president, those are things, and we're supposed to pray for those who are in authority. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody is cut out to be president. Not everybody is cut out to be a leader like that. But it's also good to hold no office and to lead by your example of love, loving people, loving the Lord, walking in integrity, being kind, being zealous for all the good things. We lead by our examples. And you know what? Everybody, I think, can do that. Everybody has some area, I think, that they can really excel, and people can look to them, look at Vicky, or look at Daniel or Ezra and say, man, do you see their passion? Do you see their purity? Do you see their honesty and integrity? And in these ways, they're like, wow, these guys are examples for us to follow. And in that way, even though they don't have any title or any position, they're not on staff, they're still leaders that people can follow. Bill Johnson, I believe I heard him say this. He talks about this in the church. He talks about kings with the hearts of servants and servants with the hearts of kings. What that means is God has called us to rule and reign and given us authority, but in our heart, we know that we're servants. But at the same time, even in our humility, even when we're doing something stinky and dirty and cleaning toilets or going in the dumps to reach people or whatever, we know that in our heart, that's not who we are. Who we are is we're royalty, called by the Lord. So we're kings with the hearts of servants and servants with the hearts of kings. And that's what we see in Jesus. That's what we see in Jesus. So I think that's about all I have to say. Let me just, I know that says the final word, but just to wrap up a little, the caboose. Guys, you'll never get away from serving. However high you get in the organization or in the church, I don't think we'll never get away from saying, what can I do for you? How can I help? How can I bless you? How can I be your servant? It's like God answers our prayers. We ask God to do something and he does it. That's what servants do. But Jesus was the ultimate example, and he's the one we follow. So here it is at the end. Serve your way to the top. Serve your way to the top. Let's stand up and we'll close in prayer.